Have you ever wondered what would happen if Gojo Satoru was given a second chance, sent back to the very beginning of his life with every single memory of everything he lived, everything he lost, and everything he failed to prevent? Would he finally be able to beat Sukuna? Would he save Geto before it was too late? Would the Shibuya incident even happen? In Jujutsu Kaisen, the afterlife is confirmed to be real. We literally see Gojo show up there after his death, chilling with Geto and Nanami like they're waiting for a train. So the question isn't just hypothetical. What if Gojo stepped onto that train instead of staying behind? Let's find out. The afterlife. Gojo Satoru is dead. He gave everything he had in that fight against Sukuna, every domain, every technique, every last drop of cursed energy, and it still wasn't enough. The strongest sorcerer in history, beaten, and now he's in the afterlife, reunited with the people he spent his entire life either trying to save or trying to avenge. Geto is there, Nanami is there, and for a moment it almost feels like peace. But Gojo can't turn his brain off. He's running through every moment, every timeline where things went wrong. Riko dying, Geto breaking, Yuji being thrown into a death sentence he never deserved, Shibuya, the prison realm, his own death, and then he hears it, a faint sound that no one else seems to notice, a ringing, the cry of a newborn baby, and somewhere in the distance, a train, sitting idle, engine running, ready to depart. Geto tells him to let it go, to finally rest, to trust the next generation to carry things forward. Nanami doesn't say much, he never does, but the look on his face says the same thing. You've done enough. It's over. Let it be over. And for 1 second, Gojo almost listens. Almost. But the word almost has never meant anything to Satoru Gojo. He walks toward the train, steps on board, closes his eyes, and opens them again as a screaming, helpless, completely undignified newborn baby, with every single memory he's ever had fully intact. Having the mind of the world's most powerful sorcerer trapped in a body that can't even hold its own head up is, by any measure, a humiliating experience. But humiliation and desperation are powerful fuels. Gojo, even as an infant, starts reaching for his cursed energy earlier than any child in recorded history. Not to show off, not because of arrogance, but because he knows exactly what's coming and he refuses to waste a single day. By the time he's 4 years old, he's already developing his cursed energy in secret, training in ways that look like nothing to anyone watching, but are building the foundation of a mastery that would have taken his past self years to achieve. He already knows every technique, every application, every limitation of the limitless. He already knows how reverse curse technique works, how to maintain infinity as a permanent passive, and how hollow purple is constructed. What once took him the better part of his teenage years to unlock now takes him months, because the knowledge is already there. He just needs his body to catch up. And when Toji Fushiguro comes to scout him as a child, the same Toji who would later be hired to kill him, this version of Gojo doesn't just notice him, he makes eye contact, smiles, and holds it just long enough to make Toji deeply uncomfortable, because this Gojo knows exactly who Toji is, what he's going to do, and what he ultimately deserves. That moment plants a seed of unease in the assassin that never quite goes away. When Gojo finally enters Jujutsu High and meets Suguru Geto again for the first time, he tells himself he's going to keep his distance, that getting too close is a liability, that if he fails again, the pain of losing him a second time would be unbearable. He lasts approximately 2 weeks before completely abandoning that plan, because Geto is exactly who he always was, the one person who ever felt like an equal, the one bond that actually meant something in a life that was otherwise defined by isolation and overwhelming power. Geto has no idea any of this is happening, of course. As far as he's concerned, Gojo is just an exceptionally gifted and slightly insufferable prodigy. But the friendship forms again, quickly and naturally, and this time Gojo isn't going to let it fracture. He already knows the path Geto was walking in the original timeline, the helplessness, the resentment, the slow accumulation of pain that eventually turned into ideology, and he's gonna cut every single one of those triggers off before they can take root. More missions together, more honest conversations, and whenever Gojo senses Geto getting close to that edge, the weight of his technique, the exhaustion of being a cursed spirit vacuum for a world that doesn't appreciate it, he's there, not to fix everything, but to make sure Geto never feels like he's carrying it alone, because that isolation was the real cancer, not the ideology, not the technique. Here's the uncomfortable truth about the original Hidden Inventory arc. Toji Fushiguro beating Gojo wasn't a fair fight. It was a perfect ambush against a teenager who was exhausted, caught off guard, and had never encountered someone with zero cursed energy before. Take any one of those conditions away, and Toji doesn't win. Take all three of them away, and Toji doesn't survive the encounter. This version of Gojo arrives at the Hidden Inventory mission knowing the exact timeline, the exact tactics, and the exact moment Toji plans to strike. When the mission for the Star Plasma vessel arrives and Toji finally makes his move, there is no dramatic struggle. Gojo steps back, activates his domain, and ends it. He even takes a moment to make sure Toji understands exactly why he's losing, what he did to Megumi's future, how much better off his son will be without him. Then hollow purple. Clean. No mess. No body left to find. And Riko Omanai lives. She gets to stand in front of Tengen's path and choose her own life, just like she wanted. And that one decision, one girl surviving, kicks off a chain reaction that dismantles almost everything Kenjaku had been building for centuries. Because Geto never watches her die. He never hits that moment of helpless rage where the ideology starts to make sense. He never massacres the village. He never becomes the Jujutsu hip. And without Geto's corpse and cursed spirit manipulation, Kenjaku loses the ability to absorb Mahito, loses access to idol transfiguration, and loses the mechanism that was supposed to trigger the merger. The entire plan collapses from a single butterfly flap. By the time Yuji eats Sukuna's finger, Gojo has been prepared preparing for years in complete silence. He knows where most of the cursed fingers are. He knows who the moles are. He knows every political move the higher-ups are planning to make. And when Megumi leads him to Yuji, Gojo arrives before anyone dies. No emergency, no execution, no manufactured crisis. Just a quiet conversation where Yuji Itadori is told the full truth and asked, plainly, if he's willing to be Sukuna's vessel. The original timeline assumed Yuji would need to be cornered into sacrifice. This version of Gojo knows better. The kid agrees, without hesitation, because that's exactly who Yuji Itadori is. No binding vow with Sukuna forms, because Sukuna never gets the opening. No fake death sentence, no months of underground missions. Yuji enters Jujutsu High as a legitimate student, alive, known, and personally trained by the strongest sorcerer in history who actually knows what he's doing this time. Why Shibuya simply cannot happen. The Shibuya incident was a trap built on 3 very specific conditions. First, Geto's face to create emotional paralysis. Second, Kenjaku operating the prison roam. Third, a Gojo who didn't see any of it coming. Remove those 3 conditions and the entire operation falls apart before it begins. Kenjaku can't use Geto's face for shock value because Geto is alive and standing next to Gojo. The prison realm can't seal someone who's been expecting it for years, and a prepared Gojo is a Gojo who cannot be caught. Every attempt Kenjaku makes runs into the same problem. Gojo is already on the other side of the door. Yogo gets eliminated without a grand stage. Hanami is taken out before she can create any meaningful chaos. Mahito survives longer, but without Kenjaku's full operational support and without his key plans succeeding, he's bleeding out strategically. And without the Shibuya incident, there is no Gojo in the prison realm, no culling game trigger. Kenjaku watches centuries of preparation crumble in real time, gain Gyaka's last card. But here's the thing about Kenjaku. A planner who's been running schemes for over 1,000 years doesn't just fold when the board stops going his way. He adapts. And his final adaptation is the most personal and the most brutal thing he could possibly attempt. He approaches Yuji in the body of his mother. No warning. No dramatic reveal. Just a quiet civilian interaction that pulls Yuji somewhere out of Gojo's reach before the mask comes off. And if anyone in this universe has the psychological precision to shatter Yuji's defenses in a single conversation, it's Kenjaku wearing the face of the woman who gave birth to him. The resultant trauma gives Sukuna just enough of an opening to begin consolidating control. And from there, the plan is simple. Use the culling game to restore Sukuna to full strength. Use Megumi as the vessel for the final battle. And use Sukuna to kill Gojo. Because Kenjaku has done his historical research and he knows the only technique ever shown to genuinely threaten the 6 Eyes and the Limitless is the 10 Shadows. It happened once 1,000 years ago. He's betting it can happen again. Sukuna takes Megumi. The culling game begins. And after everything, we're still heading toward the confrontation that was always inevitable, just on very different terms. The reason Gojo lost the first time comes down to one thing. He never anticipated a dismantle that could cut through the world itself. He never knew Mahoraga could adapt to infinity. He had never seen that technique before, and that gap in his knowledge cost him everything. This version of Gojo has seen it. He knows exactly what it looks like, exactly when it's coming, and exactly how to move. When Mahoraga adapts and Sukuna fires the world-cutting slash, Gojo reads it with the 6 Eyes and steps out of the way clean. And a Mahoraga that's already been one-shotted cannot adapt again. Sukuna's ultimate trump card is gone. Backed completely into a corner with no options remaining, Sukuna does the one thing no one expected. He abandons Megumi's body entirely and reclaims his original Heian-era form. Full power, no vessel, no limitations. The true king of curses, exactly as he existed 1,000 years ago. Both fighters have burned through their domains by this point. No unlimited void, no malevolent shrine. What remains is the purest possible version of this fight. Raw technique, raw instinct, and 2 lifetimes of accumulated experience colliding at full speed. Whether Gojo wins outright or falls having taken Sukuna down to his last reserves, the outcome is the same. Yuta, Yuji, and Maki are waiting. Kenjaku doesn't survive what comes next. What's left standing? No prison realm, no Shibuya, no culling game. Geto is alive. Ninami is alive. Junpei is alive. Haibara is alive. Riko Amanai lived her own life exactly like she wanted. The next generation of sorcerers, Yuji, Megumi, Nobara, Yuta, grows up without the world collapsing around them. They don't need to be saved anymore. They just need to be taught. And Gojo Satoru, the man who spent an entire lifetime being the strongest person in every room, while somehow never being able to protect the people he actually cared about, he finally gets to just be a teacher. Nah, he'd win. If you want to see what happens when it's not Gojo who gets reborn, but Yuji Itadori, right before the Shibuya incident, that video is dropping next.